Welcome to the Week 15 Sports Betting Picks video here at FTN Bets, otherwise known as Betting with Benny. We have a very interesting week here in the NFL. We have Thursday games, we have Saturday games, we have Sunday games at 1 and 4 o'clock, an 8 o'clock Sunday game, and a Monday night football game. So this is a busy week of NFL action. There are no more buys here for the season, so we're going to have 16 games every week from here on out, and a lot of playoff hopes that are going to be either dashed or teams that are going to wind up staying in the hunt right now. And the first one we're going to talk about is going to be the San Francisco 49ers taking on the Seattle Seahawks. San Francisco is 9 and 4 on the year. They're coming off a big win over Tampa Bay in Brock Purdy's first start. 35-7 was the final score in that game. Seattle is 7 and 6 on the year. They're coming off what could be considered a bad loss for them against the Carolina Panthers. What was the final score in that game? Was it 30-29, I think was the final score in that game? So they're coming off of that loss there. When I break the numbers down on this game, let's see. On a neutral field, I got San Francisco probably about 4.5, 5 points better. Factor in home field advantage. I get San Francisco minus 2.5, minus 3. FanDuel has it at minus 3. DraftKings has it at minus 3.5. So I guess there is a little bit of value on the Seattle side over on DraftKings. You can get that plus 3.5 on DraftKings. I think that's a decent number. I mean, there's no Jimmy G here, right? You got Brock Purdy, who actually looked pretty good in his first full start this week. The big news there for San Francisco is Deebo Samuel's left that game early. So we'll have to see if he's going to be available to play, if he's going to be 100%, if he's going to be good to go. I think that's kind of why I'm sitting here. But I do think there's a little bit of value on Seattle at home, plus 3.5 here, assuming that Kenneth Walker is going to be able to go for them as well. If they still have a mess in the backfield, we saw how bad that was last week. So definitely don't want to be investing any money in that if that's going to be the case here again. So now we move on to Saturday. We have 1, 2, 3 games on Saturday. The first one is going to be the Indianapolis Colts taking on the Minnesota Vikings. Indy is 4-8-1 on the year. They're coming off a bye, so we're going to make a little bit of an adjustment up for them, having some extra rest. Minnesota 10-3 on the year. They lost in that shootout game that everybody expected against the Detroit Lions. 34-23 was the final score in that game. Detroit kicked the field goal to go up 11, make it 2 scores, and kind of cruise to victory there at the end. Let's see. When I break this game down, I mean, I still think Indianapolis is a very bad team. I still think Minnesota is a slightly above average. I don't think they're a great team, but I do think they're a slightly above average team. So when I break it down here, I get Minnesota on a neutral field about 5 points better, factor in home field advantage. I get minus 7. FanDuel and DraftKings have it at minus 4.5. I mean, listen, Indy's not Detroit, right? Like, Detroit is a good team that got very healthy. They got their first-round draft pick back. They got their starting wide receivers and DJ Shark and Josh Reynolds back. Amon-Ra St. Brown is healthy. DeAndre Swift is healthy. They added Justin Jackson. Like, this is a very good team, and the defense is playing a lot better than they were too. So, this is a very different situation. I do not think Indianapolis is the same kind of team that Detroit was, and that game was in Detroit. This game is in Minnesota, so I think this is a little bit too much of an overreaction to what just happened to Minnesota this week. So I think there's a lot of value on Minnesota. I love Minnesota laying the 4.5 here. DraftKings and FanDuel both have it at 4.5, so you could lay that 4.5 on either side. Next game up is going to be the Baltimore Ravens taking on the Cleveland Browns. Baltimore is 9 and 4 on the year, coming off a win over Pittsburgh, 16-14, in a game where they knocked out Pittsburgh's starting quarterback, Kenny Pickett. Like I said, they were able to win the game. They had their backup quarterback in there, Tyler Huntley. He got knocked out of that game as well. And this is what makes this game a little bit tough here. Cleveland is 5-8 on the year. They're coming off a loss to Cincinnati. What was the final score? I think it was 23-10 in that game. So here's why I say it's a little bit tough, right? Like, we aren't expecting Lamar Jackson back. Lamar Jackson was out from 1 to 3 weeks. So there's a chance that he's back, but I'm not expecting him to be back. If Lamar was back, this would probably be like maybe maybe like a 2-point Cleveland spread would probably be what it would be. Maybe a 1-point Cleveland spread or a pick 'em. If Huntley's the quarterback, I would get Cleveland should be favored by 4. And what we're looking at now kind of is Cleveland by 3.5 on DraftKings and FanDuel. If Huntley's not able to go either, though, then I think Anthony Brown is their third string quarterback. If Brown was the starting quarterback, I would think the spread on this game should be more like -6 or -7. We don't know much about this kid. Tyler Huntley, we at least saw make a couple starts last year, and he was okay. Does he have some limitations in his game? Yeah, he does, but he's a serviceable guy there to fill in. I have no idea what they would get out of Brown. So the way I'm looking at it here is I think there's value on the Cleveland side. Now, how much value there is on the Cleveland side depends. If Huntley's the quarterback, maybe we got like a half a point to a point of value. If it's going to be Brown, then maybe it's like 3 or 4 points worth of value here. So I do think you want to lay the -3 right now with Cleveland if you can, because again, depending on who's going to be the quarterback, unless it's Lamar Jackson, which I really doubt it's going to be, I think the value is on the Cleveland side. And even if it is Lamar, all right, maybe you're a point or two off. But again, 1 to 3 weeks is what he was supposed to be out. He missed one game. Even if he's back, I can't imagine he's 100%. They did not look all that great, although J.K. Dobbins did. So that is one positive for them there. But really, I think the value is on the Cleveland side here. So I like laying Cleveland -3. Next game up, the Miami Dolphins taking on the Buffalo Bills. This is a big game for the AFC East and my New York Jets, who could really use a couple Miami losses here. Miami is 8-4 on the year. I did not factor in the Sunday Night Football game because they are still playing that as we do this right now against the Los Angeles Chargers. If they win that game, they're 9-4. If they lose that game, they're 8-5. Buffalo is 10-3. They're coming off a win against my New York Jets, 20-12 this weekend. When I break this down, let's see. I get Buffalo should be favored by about 6. Now, because Miami is playing on Sunday Night Football, I don't have a line here on DraftKings or FanDuel yet for this game. So this game will probably be up, I don't know, either sometime later on Sunday night or sometime on Monday morning once we see how everything works out here on Sunday night. If Miami is more than a touchdown underdog, like if Miami's plus 7.5, you want to rail that Miami number there. If Buffalo is under 4.5, so if Buffalo's like -4 favorite, then you want to be on the Buffalo side of this. Anything in between there, like 4.5 to like 7, basically, is probably around where it should be here. So, let's wait and see what that number is. But this way, you guys have an idea. Like I said, my number's Buffalo -6, so wouldn't really have any value until we got down to like under 4.5 or over 7.5. Let's see, what do we got next here? Now we move on to the Sunday games. So the Sunday 1 o'clock games, we'll take a little break after the 1 o'clock games. But for now, Atlanta and New Orleans, two teams that are coming off of buys last week. So Atlanta stays at 5-8, New Orleans stays at 4-9. I do have New Orleans slightly better on a neutral field, factor in home field advantage. I get New Orleans should be favored by about 4 points in this game. Big news that I wanted to talk about here before we get into this. Atlanta has decided to make a QB switch. So Marcus Mariota, again, another guy who we know his limitations. He has his limitations. We've seen him throughout the beginning of the season here. Desmond Ridder is going to be the starting quarterback here for the Atlanta Falcons moving forward. I did make a little bit of an adjustment down to Atlanta, but not much because we really don't know what we're going to see here. I mean, again, it's not like Marcus Mariota was all that great, setting the world on fire and, really making all the players around him better. I don't know if Desmond Ridder is going to do that either, but it is a kid that I like coming out of college. So we'll see how this goes. There probably will be an adjustment made next week, but for now, I'm going to go with the 1.5 point adjustment or the 1 point adjustment that I did make here for Ridder. And that's to the downside off of Mariota, who at least has some NFL experience. With that being said, I got New Orleans -4. FanDuel has it at -3.5. DraftKings agrees with me on the -4. We're pretty much on market here. There's not really anything to bet on. Next game up, Pittsburgh Steelers, Carolina Panthers. Again, we got to see what happens with Pickett with that concussion. Mitch Trubisky came in and actually played one of the better games he's played all season when Pickett went down. So I don't really consider Pickett that much better than him. Maybe a little bit of an adjustment we'd make here, but not really anything crazy. Let's see. I have these two teams basically even. I did make a slight adjustment downwards if it's going to be Trubisky. I would make a slight adjustment upwards, but we're talking like maybe a point at most. Half a point is probably it. So if Pickett is out, I would think that the spread on this game should be -2 Carolina. If Pickett is in, I would say -1 Carolina. FanDuel has it at -1.5. DraftKings has it at -2. So I don't really have a bet here on this game. I'm pretty much on market here on this one. I do think Carolina wins. I like Carolina a little bit more. Sam Darnold has looked pretty good and actually led that team pretty well in the last couple games. So Carolina might actually have found something. Their defense is very good as well. But so is Pittsburgh. So like I said, I think these are two very evenly matched teams. Slight lean here to Carolina, but again, nothing that I'm willing to bet on. Next game up, Philadelphia Eagles taking on the Chicago Bears. Eagles 12-1 on the year, coming off a win against the Giants. 48-22, I think, was the final score in that game. But they won big, and they won pulling away. It wasn't even close there at the end. Chicago was on a bye, so we got to make a little bit of an upward adjustment here for Chicago because they were on a bye. I usually give teams about 2 points when they're on the bye, and maybe that's the difference between me and the spread here. I get Philly playing Chicago at Chicago should be favored by about 7.5. I have it slightly more than a touchdown. DraftKings has it at -9. FanDuel has it at -8.5. I mean, do I really want to bet on Chicago +9 though? I don't know. I mean, Justin Fields been good. He's been keeping them in games, but this Philly team is just very, very good here. So, according to my numbers, there is a little bit of value on Chicago +9. If you want to go that route, I'm probably going to be staying away from it though. Again, my number's 7.5. The number is 9. If it was 10.5, then yeah, I'd be like, all right, we capture the 10. We're getting a semi-key number there. Maybe it's worth doing it. But the difference between 7.5 and 9.5, not really anything that's going to get me off the couch to put money on the Chicago side of this game. I think Philly's very good. I think they're a deserving 12-1 team and a deserving favorite here by more than a touchdown. I just think it's too many points, so I wouldn't be betting on the Philly side. Next game up, Kansas City Chiefs, Houston Texans. Let's see here. On a neutral field, everything going in here. I got 14 and a half actually on a neutral field. Factor in home field advantage for Houston. I get 12.5. Yes, it's a big number. DraftKings has it -14. FanDuel has it at -14. Houston +14, I think, is actually probably the side. I would rather take Houston +14 than lay 14 points with Kansas City. We just saw Houston as a 17-point underdog, basically almost beat Dallas. They had a chance there. They had a goal. Dallas had a goal line stand and then went the length of the field to take the lead and wind up winning that game. But it was a lot closer than it looked right there. And it definitely wasn't anywhere near the 17 points that the spread kind of said it was going to be here. So I have a lot of respect for this Houston team. I have a lot of respect for the Houston coaching staff. I don't think they have a lot of talent, but I think the coaches will at least put in a decent game plan. Again, how many more rabbits can they pull out of their hat? I don't really know. Kansas City was a team that we saw had a big lead against Denver, and then they kind of coughed that up a little bit and then had to come back again at the end. This has been a theme with Kansas City for years here. So for me, I think Houston +14 is the side of this game that I would rather be on. I kind of like that, especially getting the full 2 touchdowns here. Let's see. Speaking of Dallas Cowboys, next game up, Dallas Cowboys, Jacksonville Jaguars. Dallas 10-3 on the year, coming off a win over Houston, 27-23 in that aforementioned game. Jacksonville 5-8 on the year, coming off a big win for them against Tennessee. What was it? 36-22 was the final there. Great game by Trevor Lawrence. Threw for over 300 yards, had 3 passing touchdowns, ran in another touchdown. He had a great matchup, right? Tennessee's been a team that people have been picking on through the air all year. I think people were just a little bit sleeping on Jacksonville and Trevor Lawrence. But again, in such a great matchup, this is exactly what you expect quarterbacks to do against Tennessee. So Trevor Lawrence went out there, handled his business. Let's see. With that being said, when I break this down, I get Dallas on the road, should be favored by slightly less than a touchdown. I think I got 6.5. DraftKings has it at 6. FanDuel has it at 5.5. I mean, I think it's too many points for me to bet on Dallas, but it's not enough extra points for me to be on the Jacksonville side of this game. So really, I have no bet on this game. If it does go up to -7, then I think getting a +7 on Jacksonville is probably the way to go. And if this thing dropped anymore, I mean, if it drops down to like 4.5 or something like that, I would probably be willing to buy in onto the Dallas side at a number that low. If it gets down to -4, I'd be all in on Dallas here, but I wouldn't even think about it until it got down to -4.5. So we're still at least a point or a point and a half away from that happening. Really, I think the spread's probably going to stay in this 5-6 range here. So not a lot of value that I would really be looking at. And that brings us to the last game in the 1 o'clock window, one that I am hopefully going to be going to if there are some tickets available. The red hot aforementioned Detroit Lions traveling to MetLife Stadium to take on my New York Jets. Detroit is 6-7 on the year, coming off a big win over Minnesota, 34-23. The Jets 7-6 on the season, coming off a loss to Buffalo, 20-12. Their first 2-game losing streak of the season after losing to Minnesota last week. I get this game as basically a pick 'em. Maybe Detroit favored by like half a point or so. If you want to move Detroit up a little bit for that win, or the Jets down a little bit for the loss they had. A 20-12 loss to Buffalo, though, is not something that I would really move a team down for. So really, if you like that Minnesota win for Detroit, Detroit would probably be the team you moved up a little bit. And the reason why I say you'd have to move one of these up a little bit is I get Jets -1.5 is what it should be here. basically because of the home field advantage. Maybe -2, -1.5, somewhere in there is the number. DraftKings agrees with me. They have it on -1.5. FanDuel has it on -1. The numbers aren't really worth a lot down here, though. When we're talking about numbers below 3, like -1, -2, -1.5, like these are all basically the same. So when I look at it here, I have no bet on this game. I'm hoping the Jets can pull this off. This would be a big win for my New York Jets, but really at the end of the day, I don't think there's any value on it. So there you go. That wraps it up for the 1 o'clock games. We're going to take a quick commercial break and be right back to talk about the 4 o'clock games, the Sunday night game, and the Monday night game here on Betting with Benny. Welcome back to the Week 15 Sports Betting Picks video here at FTN Bets, otherwise known as Betting with Benny. We talked about all the Thursday game, the Saturday game, the beginning of the Sunday games at 1 o'clock. Got a few more games. I think there's 4 games in the 4 o'clock window, and then the Sunday night and the Monday night game to talk about. Remember, if you want the updates on some of these games when the spreads do drop for some of the ones we didn't have yet, get over to ftnbets.com. You could go to www.ftnbets.com/free. Sign up for a free trial offer. Use promo code Benny, BENNY, and that'll even save you some money when your trial does transfer over to your first month. This also works over on FTN Daily and FTN Fantasy as well. Use that promo code Benny, BENNY, and you can save 20% off any package on any of our sites, not just for NFL, but for, a year-round package, or if you want to get a jump on the college basketball stuff, if you want to get ready for the baseball package, which is going to be dropping pretty soon as well, you can get in on that and get ready for your drafts. But for now, let's talk about the rest of the games that we have here. Next one up is going to be the Arizona Cardinals taking on the Denver Broncos. So this one is a little bit tough for me to break down for you guys. Arizona is 4-8 on the year. They play on Monday Night Football against New England, so we don't know how that game's going to be. We'll have to wait and see. Again, if you want the updates, make sure you get over to FTN Bets, get into the Discord, and once we have a new line on this game, we'll be able to drop it. The other reason why there's no line on this game is the Denver side of it. So Denver is 3-10 on the year, coming off a loss to Kansas City, 34-28. In that loss, Russell Westbrook suffered a concussion, or what I assume is a concussion. He ran down inside the 5-yard line, got hit pretty hard, banged his head against the turf, wound up coming out of the game for Brett Rippon, who came in in relief for Russell Wilson there. If Russell Wilson is active here, I would actually think with Denver being at home and that really good defense that this game would be a pick 'em. If Russ doesn't play in this game, I would think that the spread on this game with Rippon as the quarterback should be -3. And that actually says a lot about Russell Wilson, that I'm only taking off 3 points for him not being the starting quarterback and going to Rippon. It kind of says how bad he's been so far this year. DraftKings does not have a line on this game yet. FanDuel actually lined it at -1.5. So a lot of times what will happen when we have one of these, situations where we don't know about a quarterback, quarterbacks are obviously worth more to a spread than any other player, any other position player, right? So what teams do, what books do a lot of time is they'll say, okay, if Russ plays, it should be 0. If Russ doesn't play, it should be -3. So we're going to leave this line up early on here at -1.5. They're not taking major bets on it because the limits are still low right now with these opening lines, but they'll leave it there and then they'll adjust it one way or another once we get some news on Russell Wilson, which we may not even get till later on in the week anyway. So right now, I don't really have anything here on the -1.5. Again, if Russ plays, you probably want to be +1.5 on the Denver side. If Russ doesn't play, laying the -1.5 on the Arizona side, probably the way to go, assuming nobody gets hurt on the Arizona side tomorrow. The other team that plays tomorrow, New England Patriots taking on the Las Vegas Raiders. Again, Patriots 6-6. They play their Monday Night Football game against Arizona, so they'll either be 6-7 or 7-6, depending on how that works out. Las Vegas, 5-8. They're coming off that loss to the Rams in the Baker Mayfield game on Thursday Night Football. So they do have a little bit of extra rest coming in here. I gave them a little bit of a bump for that. When I break that down, then giving them a little bit of a bump, because I have New England as a better team than Las Vegas. So when you give them that little bump, it basically becomes even to me. The game is in Las Vegas. So I would have Las Vegas favored by about 1.5 to 2 points. FanDuel and I agree, -1.5 here. DraftKings only has it at -1. Again, though, I don't really have a bet when we're talking like -1 to -2 is the spread. Anything under that full field goal there is not really going to move me one way or another if I'm a little higher or a little lower than a number. So right now, I have no bet on this game. Next game up, Tennessee Titans taking on the Los Angeles Chargers. Let's see, Tennessee coming off a loss to Jacksonville, 36-22. The Chargers, 6-6 on the year, playing on that Sunday night football game against Miami right now. They've been going back and forth in this game. Chargers look pretty good. I think Miami's a really good team. Chargers find ways to lose games, so we'll see if they find a way to lose this game before it's over here. Let's see. With that being said, the look-ahead line that I would get would be the Chargers -1. When I break it down, I have Tennessee slightly better on a neutral field, but that fact that it's not on a neutral field and it's going to be in LA means that I do have LA favored by about 1 point. But really, like I said, this is basically a coin flip on this game. I don't have a line for FanDuel or DraftKings yet because the Chargers are still playing on Sunday Night Football. So again, get over to the Discord and you get the updates on that whenever they do drop. Next game up, the last game in the 4 o'clock window, Cincinnati Bengals taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Cincinnati 9-4 on the year, coming off a win against Cleveland, 23-10 in that game. Tampa Bay 6-7 on the year, coming off a loss to the San Francisco 49ers, 35-7 in a game where they just got absolutely bludgeoned. I probably should make a bigger adjustment, but you guys know I've been lower on Tampa Bay all year long. And I actually think that the tide is turning a little bit. And it's not that Tampa Bay is playing better, but I think that everybody else is now over adjusting Tampa Bay, even beyond where I adjusted them to. And the reason why I said that is, I have Cincinnati about 3, maybe 3.5 points better on a neutral field. So factoring in the home field advantage, I would get like -1, maybe -1.5. The number right now, DraftKings has it at -3. FanDuel has it at -3.5. Actually like Tampa Bay plus 3.5. I think there's value on Tampa Bay at home getting 3.5, more than a field goal here. I wouldn't take the +3 on DraftKings, but on FanDuel where you're getting 3.5 and you get the hook on your side and you win on the field goal, I really like that number here in this game. Like I said, I just think that, -3 is too many points. I only got 1, maybe 1.5. So Tampa Bay plus 3.5 on FanDuel is my bet here. I know a lot of people aren't going to agree that, but like I said, that's the way that I'm going here. This Tampa team has been very up and down. They still have a chance to win their division as bad as they played at 6-7, but they are going to have to win some games, and I do think they're going to get it together and play pretty well here against Cincinnati. So now we move on to Sunday Night Football. Very interesting Sunday Night Football game here. New York Giants taking on the Washington Commanders. Both teams are 7-5-1 on the season. Giants are coming off a beatdown at the hands of the Philadelphia Eagles, 48-22. But again, we don't make any negative adjustments for somebody losing to a 12-1 team. That's a legit 12-1 team here in Philadelphia. Philly was expected to go in there and beat up on the Giants, and already, that's exactly what they did, right? Like they were pretty much in control of that game from start to finish, as everybody expected them to be. The Giants did what they could. They're just overmatched against Philly. That doesn't mean that they're going to be overmatched against the Washington Commanders, though. This is not the same caliber of team as the Philadelphia Eagles here. The Commanders are coming off a bye, so I give them a little bit of a bump here, which is actually why I wind up getting Washington even as high as they did. On a neutral field, I would have the Giants slightly favored in this game. Washington being the home team, I get that number up to, let's see, probably Washington -2-ish or so. And then when you factor in the bye, you probably add about 2 more for that. So I get Washington -4 is the number that I have on this game. DraftKings has it at -4. FanDuel has it at -3.5. I mean, really, we're pretty much on market here. Not much else to talk about. I think this is going to be a good game. I wouldn't doubt that it could go either way here, but I do think Washington has a better chance to come away with the victory here than the Giants. But I think the number is right where it was. If this number was below 3, then maybe I'd be a little bit more interested in Washington. At 4, though, it's not enough to put me on the Giants, and it's too much to have me bet on Washington. So that brings us to the last game we got here. The Monday Night Football game is the Los Angeles Rams against the Green Bay Packers. Baker Mayfield, probably starting quarterback. We have to see how that all works out. I actually gave the Rams a little bit of a boost here because they played on Thursday Night Football. I had to give Green Bay a bigger boost, though, because they had the bye here this week. So those two kind of cancel out. A little bit of a higher edge here going to Green Bay, but maybe like a point, I think, is what I made it here. So when everything breaks down, I get Green Bay on a neutral field about 5 points better. Factor in home field advantage. I get Green Bay -7. FanDuel has this at -7.5 for Green Bay. DraftKings has it at -8. So again, this is one of those games where I do not want to play the Rams. I really don't want to play the Rams, but I don't think that, I have it at 7.5 -8. That's too many points for me here. So I don't want to be on the Rams side. I don't want to be on the Packers side of this game. I hate to do this, but this is probably another one of those games where I think it's better to just pass here. I don't think there's any value one way or the other. So there you go. That's going to wrap it up for all of our games to talk about here in week 15. We got a couple more games that are coming up. If I don't see you guys before then, I just wanted to say have a happy holidays, have a Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, whatever whatever you guys celebrate out there. Thanks for rocking with us over here at FTN Bets. For my producer, my man, Quan, this is Benny Ricciardi signing off for another episode of Betting with Benny here at FTN Bets.